I can do that if you'd like, yeah. Okay.
I'm not on the phone at all.
Yeah, he's
on the phone?
listening, yeah. We're gonna have his picture up there, but he,
Okay, then
He knows he can't
okay, so we
participate.
can let people know that.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. I think we're gonna have her picture up there anyway.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Village Council meeting. It's regular meeting of March 26, 2024. We'll begin as we've been beginning now for many months, with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Reverend Trey Majura, of the associate pastor of the Village Chapel and a former Army officer, to come forward and lead us in the invocation, and he's going to be followed by Samuel Karuba, a 6-year-old Pinehurst resident who attends Episcopal Day School. Go ahead, Reverend.
Let us pray. Father God, we come humbly this evening asking for your guidance and wisdom, knowing that truth is only found in you. We thank you that you care for our spiritual needs, physical needs, and that you care for our community here in Pinehurst. You've not turned your back on your world, and we know that you seek for your kingdom to come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You have appointed this village council to work for the betterment of your people and your creation. And to that end, we pray your blessing upon them. Give them wisdom and strength to balance mercy and justice, to seek and do the hard right while avoiding the easy wrong. We pray that you would give them wisdom to work efficiently and effectively in the coming hours. We remember and pray for our country and its leaders, our state and our community. We thank you and pray for our fire department and police department, the incredible work that they do. And we pray for all of the families represented here today and the sacrifice they often must make in order for this work to be done. We pray your blessings once again on this meeting, that through your guidance they may be a part of reconciling a broken world back into something whole. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Now I'll ask everybody to rise, and Samuel, if you can get the microphone and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you. Okay, good job. All right, we will go on to there with reports from the manager and the council, and I think the village manager can explain what's behind the screen on us.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, it is for those in attendance and otherwise listening in. You probably have recognized that we have 4 council members present tonight. Dr. Jeff Morgan, for professional reasons, couldn't attend tonight. He had to be out of town, but his absence was previously excused by the remaining 4 council members. So he's listening in. He can't participate remotely. We can't do that anymore because the old COVID rules have kind of expired. But he's doing the best he can. He's going to listen in to the conversation going forward. One other thing I'd like to comment on, mostly for the council, the posting for our assistant village manager position closed on Sunday. We wound up with 79 applicants. That's certainly a pretty healthy number. I don't have a real good sense for the overall quality of that applicant pool yet, but the number suggests that we're in good shape. And I'm also happy to report that over the weekend we had 4 of our more senior current employees submit their applications as well. So I think we're in good shape.
Great. Thanks very much. Let me go down a few items that I have happened since the last council meeting that I want to share with our residents. Last Monday, the March Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting was held, and council members Farrell, Ficklin, and Taylor joined me, and we heard from the police and fire chiefs. They reported to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee as to the status of data regarding the work they do in the crime and fire prevention areas in particular. And coming up at in the April meeting, they're going to be giving a briefing about the upcoming U.S. Open, some real details. So those of you that are in contact with your NAC members, if you have questions, provide them to them. If you'd like to attend yourself, you're welcome. There's room in the audience. Last week, myself and Councilman Taylor, as well as the village manager, attended the Sand Hills Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting and continued progress on getting our governance structure in place. And we still have a few months of work to do, but there's progress there, and we'll be reporting back to you as there's more substantive news to pass on. I wanted to mention that particularly to those of you who are car enthusiasts, last week I met with Chris Smith of the Sand Hills Motoring Group about the event they have Memorial Day weekend here in Pinehurst. It's a several-day event, a lot of antique cars and fancy cars, and there'll be a lot of activity. So there'll be more news about it coming out soon, but you might want to just, if you're going to be here Memorial Day weekend, it's a chance to enjoy another sporting event other than golf in this case, automobiles. I want to, last week I also attended the Convention Visitors and Bureau meeting, their quarterly board meeting, and listened to their discussion on growth in the area and the upcoming U.S. Open plans. The area is growing, the economy is strong, and they're all looking forward to the U.S. Open. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, our community leaders are very active in looking out for the economy here in the Moore County area. This past Saturday, I want to compliment the village staff and also say congratulations to the hundreds of people who showed up at the Easter egg hunt that was moved inside to the community center on Rattlesnake Road there. It was going to be outside in the threat of rain. The staff analyzed the situation, said, oh, let's just move it inside. And I went by there, and it was full house. So I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. And who knows, it may be in the future inside because it works very efficiently there. Just two other items. One is this upcoming April 6th, Saturday, is the spring matinee harness races at our historic harness track from 11:30 to 5 p.m. So those of you who have an interest, you can go on the website and find out more about the harness track races and how to attend and how to enjoy yourselves. It will be a fun afternoon. Lastly, it's every now and then I have gotten in, I'm in the habit of reading the Pinehurst Police Department sort of daily report updates, but I think once or twice before I just summarize them for those who listen or watch this event, this council meeting. And to give you an idea, I wanted to tell you just in one day, a little summary of what our police department goes through in their regular activities. They had a total of 70 calls to respond to. Now I broke out some of the ones that probably most interest people. They issued 10 traffic citations. Those are actual citations, not verbal warnings. So they issued 2 written warnings in addition to the 10 citations. But so they're busy out there making sure the streets are safe. They issued 5 verbal warnings. They responded to 3 crash reports. They assisted in a mental patient's situation with commitments at First Health. They made 2 welfare checks at homes, responded to 2 animal complaints, and responded to 2 noise complaints. So the police department is busy, and they produce this report on a daily basis so they can track and know what's happening in our community and how to address it. So I want to thank them for their work. Sometimes it's a thankless task, what they do, particularly sort of the blocking and tackling that they go through. So thank you. On that note, I'll ask Councilman Taylor if he has anything to comment on.
Well, as you suggested, I was at both the the NAC meeting and the SMPO meeting. The only thing that I might clarify for the SMPO for people either here or watching on live stream, And the only reason I mention this is a couple of people asked me a question about this. The number 20 came up in the discussion surrounding Foxfire withdrawing and giving their vote effectively to the county. And someone thought that there was some reference to 20,000 people. It was not. It was a reference to what voting share would the county have. It was initially listed at 20%, but on further examination, it's actually 19.8, and going forward, they will actually show at least 1 decimal point in the voting. So to the extent anyone was confused about that, I would mention that. The other thing that I would mention is following the NAC meeting, I went over to an event hosted by the Moore County Economic Development Partners at Beehawk in Southern Pines. It is a new whiskey distillery. They actually have not actually started making their own, but they intend to next month. I would mention that it is an impressive facility, and for people who like brown spirits, it is definitely worth visiting. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Ficklin.
Oh, if I can follow that. In addition to NAC, last week I also met with a group of residents, concerned residents, along with representative from Friend to Friend. The point of the meeting was to discuss ways that we in the community can make our residents more aware of things like domestic abuse, as well as human trafficking, which, believe it or not, are issues that are even prevalent in probably not prevalent, but they're here in our community. So this was the first of what we hope will be ongoing meetings and hopefully information. Secondly, last evening I attended the Pinehurst Business Partners meeting at the Purple Thistle. Couple of things from there. One was that they expressed gratitude to both the village and to the USGA for doing a great job about communicating with them over time. They specifically mentioned Kristen Bunton and how grateful they were that she's taken on and hopefully meeting on a quarterly basis as we go forward. So very complimentary in it. And you know, that group can be not always as complimentary, but they certainly were in this case. Secondly, they were promoting the Sand Hills Dog Fair. This is, it's quite the event coming up. Oh, this way. Quite the event coming up, so bring your dog on, and your whomever else you would like, on April 13th at 10 a.m. It's at the Arboretum. It's a dog walk. You can bring your dog, walk around, get dog treats, people treats. If your dog, like mine, is not suitable for public, you can you can go along anyway without your dog and pick up dog treats to take home. So it's sponsored by them as well as Pinehurst and other organizations around, and it benefits local rescues. So put that on your calendar. Thank you.
Councilman Farrell.
Thank you, Pat. I also was at the NAC meeting. I just wanted to second the comment that the public safety presentation at the NAC was I think, a valuable exercise for the community to better understand the breadth and depth of the services that the fire and police department provide this community. And hopefully they'll bring that message back into the neighborhoods. I think it was very valuable. I had a long conversation with the National Park Service last week. Very productive, I thought. And I spoke with Ellen Rankin. You may remember she's the person who presented the integrity report last year. She was here. She is the architectural historian at the Atlanta office, the Southeast Regional Office, and inherited that position from the person who was previously visiting here. That was Turkia Lowe, who has been promoted as the National Park Service Chief Historian over all the historic structures within the Park Service. So we have a lot of visibility within the Park Service as far as Pinehurst goes. Anyway, our conversation ranged from, first of all, we talked about the relationship and how the relationship is so much better than, and we've been doing a great job of communicating with each other, and so we're on that track. The integrity study was important, and it actually had a lot to do with the status of Pinehurst as a National Park Service historic landmarks site not being threatened, although the Park Service is changing its categories, and in their process of doing that, so they don't really have a category that, like they used to have, such as satisfactory, threatened, emergency, and so forth. But in any case, we are not in any kind of threatened category. We are in no one's satisfactory, quite honestly, unless you're in a community that is actually nothing's going to change, like you're on the beach, and the beach is never going to change. Any place that has a dynamic community and is subject to development is going to be in a status where something may happen that they have to look at every now and then. So we had a long discussion about that. We had a good discussion about the library status, and I gave her, to my knowledge, some information as to things that have been considered about the library, and particularly the concern has always been with the village green. And in fact, it's been referenced time and time again as one of the top priorities as far as the National Park Service to preserve the integrity of the community relative to the landmark status. And so we had some discussion on that. When we talk a little bit more about that in detail, we can go into a little more detail there, but we did cover that in some length, to tell you the truth. Had a discussion about what she didn't realize, and I just kind of discovered that our small area plan for Village Place incorporates a small part of the landmark district. And so it was sort of a discovery that I made, and I brought to her attention. She said, oh, that's interesting. So we should stay in touch as the small area plan and any development in Village Place occurs relative to just the one or so parcel that is in the historic landmark district. But not much is, but there is some. And they're always concerned about any parcel that is within the district. We had a discussion about her review of the DOT plans. And I thought that was kind of interesting because she had talked about to the NCDOT about the traffic circle to some extent. And they reviewed their current thinking on it. And she gave them some counsel as to where on a design-wise, it may be more in keeping with their criteria, although she wasn't willing to do a design of the traffic circle. Who is? So we had that discussion, and also that she had been discussing with DOT relative to the Morganton Road intersection issue, which they are pleased that apparently the latest thinking is that there will not be rerouted such that it would remove a barn. Is that correct, Jeff? So that would alleviate their concern, which they had some concern about an historic structure being removed by DOT. Also had a little discussion about NC's, although they're not well defined, NC's plan for any improvements on Route 5 through Pinehurst, that is Beulah Hill Road, from where our boundary is on Route 5, say Blake Boulevard or something to that effect, all the way to 211. And we discussed that briefly, although there is no definite plans that she's been able to see, but the National Park Service would like to very much stay in touch with us as those plans may or may not develop over time, because they go right through the heart of the landmark district. A brief discussion about the native plant issue relative to, although it doesn't greatly affect any National Park Service landmark status, we don't think, but the concern is that Pinehurst is Pinehurst, and we'd like it to be as beautiful as possible, and to what extent that may be of some concern. It's obviously low on the pecking order of things to look at, but anyway. So we concluded with we're going to stay in touch. We're going to keep each other up to date on any advice and counsel as to she can give us going forward, and we will definitely let her know of any plans that may or may not affect the landmark district. So it's a lengthy conversation, but I think it's worthy to establish the contact and maintain the contact.
If I could, Jack, I actually had an ad hoc conversation with one of the with Mr. Pozos, who is the district supervising district manager, who made a presentation to SMPO here last week. And I would say that they certainly don't have any definitive plans, but there's some general ideas of what they would like to do on Beulah Hill Road, which I think people will find not terribly intrusive and largely beneficial to alleviating some of the traffic there. How should we, is it our role to suggest a conversation be initiated there?
Well, I think anything we know about changes that occur within the landmark district, we should ask, at least advise the National Park Service. More information is better than less information, put it that way. And to the extent that they can give us some design guidance and/or help us with some criteria, that may be useful. So I would say let's stay in touch, and anything we know, we should communicate that to the National Park Service.
I'll be happy to sort of give you the briefing. One example is on northbound Beulah Hill Road. They'd like to create a dedicated left turn lane at Linden Road, which I think people would appreciate and makes sense. They think there's enough room. So they're pretty non-controversial, and no reason not to be communicating that.
Correct.
And Jeff, with respect to something you flagged, which was on the first time we saw a list of STIPs, they had omitted the one somehow for the traffic circle. They have plugged in the same cost estimate that was there for the CFI. That doesn't mean that that's what they're going to present again, but they had to put something, they had to put a placeholder there, and so that's what they put in the $57 million or whatever it was. Yeah. So I mentioned that.
Yeah, Ellen said she did review it. It was the CFI plan. So,
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jack. Okay, let us go on to the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? No. I take that as adopted. Thank you. And now I'll gather we will have item 5, which will be the audit contract for fiscal year 2024. Dana, welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. We have received the draft audit contract. We're recommending that we stick with Forbes LLP, who's been our auditor the last couple of years. They were previously another firm and had merged together. Since that merger, they did add some additional fees, which we saw for the first time last year in the contract, which are a 5% technology and administrative fee, and they also are charging us for out-of-pocket travel expenses for the audit team. So this year's contract includes those fees. One thing that is a little different from the way that we did the contract last year is this year it is set up as a not to exceed amount of $52,500. Last year it was not set up that way, and we did have to come back to council later to do an amendment to increase the contract for the additional fees once we knew what those amounts were. It is a slight increase, a little bit over $1,000 compared to last year's total audit fee, but that included additional fees for the GASB 96 implementation. That was sort of a one-time thing. We don't have any similar new GASB standard implementations this year, so I don't anticipate having any fees for that. In terms of the actual terms of the contract, it's all the same as the prior year. Your packet included both the LGC contract form that is required, as well as the Forbes engagement letter, which is their format of the contract with us. So both of those do go to the LGC and would need to be executed by the mayor.
Questions for Dana?
I'll just add one, Dana, and first of all, thank you for responding to my other questions. Somebody audits the state of North Carolina books. May or may not be Forbes, I don't know.
They have an internal auditor, the state auditor.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess my only question is, do we think it is at all worth asking whether we are giving up some protection we should have by agreeing to stipulate laws of Texas rather than North Carolina? Because I suspect the state would not do otherwise. It's a minor question. Other than that, I thank you for your answers.
Yep, I can follow up on that.
Why do you think they do that right now?
My assumption is there must be some advantage to the state of Texas laws since they're a national firm. And they're also part of a larger sort of consortium of firms, if you will, called Praxity, that there must be something that that's either advantageous or that they're able to leverage by utilizing the laws of Texas. since they-
Advantageous for them, not necessarily. And I'm wondering, what, if anything, are we giving? I mean, there's a reason corporations specify often Delaware as their state of incorporation, what have you. And I'm just wondering.
Yep, I'll follow up with that with our attorney.
I'd be curious too. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2024 audit contract with Forvis LLP, not to exceed $52,500 for the financial statement audit, single state audit, one program, and applicable fees and out-of-pocket expenses.
Motion?
Second?
Motion second. Hearing no debate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Item 6, I guess Angie is coming forward. Topic is discuss village manager recruitment timeline and process.
Okay, good afternoon. I know it's not on the screen, but I did submit a timeline, a draft timeline for you to consider for the recruitment for the village manager. And that would be to start the process, post the vacancy in April, and we would run that through the end of May. And then we would start reviewing applications in June, those first 2 weeks. We would do that, you would do that on your own, but then when we discuss the candidates, we would do that in closed session.
But again,
When we discuss the individual candidates, we would do that in closed session. And then by the end of June, you would have that list narrowed down. And we would submit supplemental questions to that short list of candidates. And then we would give them a couple of weeks to respond to that. And then we would review those responses to the supplemental questions. Again, that would be done in closed session. And from that shortened list, you would then decide who you're going to interview. And I've got a tentative time frame on here to interview, end of July through August, and that would really depend on how quickly we get through the candidates, how many candidates there are, what you've narrowed it down to, and how many interviews you want to have.
I was going to make a suggestion there that we set a date to complete the interviews of August 2nd, so that we can, if we need to, we can use the August 13th council meeting and go into closed session if we want to have a discussion. Otherwise, we're waiting really until September to get into closed session.
I had sort of a series of thoughts to very slightly accelerate this timeline only with respect to when our existing meetings are. Not to say we can't convene a special meeting if we need to. And in light of the number of responses we've gotten for the assistant manager job, and just as one example, I would close the period not on May 31st, but May 25th. We have a meeting on May 28th. If we don't get a sufficient number of candidates, we can always extend that. But I would hope that the 79 we've gotten might be indicative of the response that we would get. So they're minor tweaks, just a few days here and there, designed to correspond to council meeting calendar.
Well, if I could, I would, if you close the posting on the 25th of May and then you want to review those in council meeting on the 28th, That is a really, really quick turnaround.
No, I'm allowing from May 26th to June 4th. I'm really looking at the June 4th meeting.
Okay,
You could keep it at May 31st, but then you've only got 4 days to get to June 4th. So it's really the June 4th that was the target. And no, you can't, if we get 70 or 80, it takes time to go through them.
Certainly, you can do this any way you want to do. I think what was on Angie's mind was the past precedent, and the last time the village council did that, they made the decision to do all of these interviews and deliberations outside of the cycle of the normal council meetings. We
Oh,
went through
absolutely.
special meetings, so.
in special meetings, the closed sessions.
But if you want to do them during the regular work sessions, you can do it then as well.
Trying to get people to interview in July and August, a lot of people that could be difficult, and we could have to, I fully accept that we may have to schedule some special meetings, but we can set some targets
Tell me again, why you were thinking that maybe moving the cutoff date up a little few days would be beneficial? Again, I kind of missed that part.
in
Sorry.
order to hit the June 4th, we're not meeting June 11th as we normally would, we're meeting June 4th, so as
Right.
not to be in conflict with the US Open, and to allow adequate time prior to June 4th, rather than having to convene a special meeting for the purpose of reviewing those, or waiting until June 25th, which would be the next, or having to schedule a special meeting.
We wouldn't be reviewing the applications in the meeting, in the first go-round, would we?
There's a discussion that would occur in closed session
Right.
on the existing, listed for sometime after June 14th, that's probably not going to happen. That's the week of the US Open. I doubt we'll get anything accomplished that week as a body.
I think, if you recall, what Angie suggested in this last discussion about this was that when the listing closes, she and I will get together and we'll huddle and we'll put together a tentative list of qualified candidates for you. And we will be giving you a product in the form of a binder that has all the applications on top for people we thought were the most, the qualified candidates, and then everybody else would be behind that for your other review if you want to look at other. So I think what I'm saying is that the process should probably, if you agree with that kind of methodology, the process should allow for that time for her and I to go through that detailed analysis of all these applications and put something together for you.
I was okay with the calendar you put up. I thought it's reasonable. I don't want to push anything, but at the same time, I don't want to delay it forever. I think it's struck a good balance.
Right, and I don't want to delay either, because it very well may be that you get a candidate who lives in another state and they may have to give notice and have to move and those kind of things. This is a pretty quick turnaround, and from an interview schedule for July 22nd through August, and I left the date open-ended in August, it could really, in theory, go through the end of the month if need be. Again, that depends on how many candidates, you select to interview. If you select 3 to interview, you could have interviews wrapped up pretty quickly. If you select 10, which I would try to discourage you, that's a lot. But if there are 10 qualified that you want to talk to, it could take longer. And again, coordinating 6 schedules can be difficult. And like you said, it is vacation season as well. So that is another added element there.
I guess I was working backwards from August 13th, which is our regular August meeting, under the theory that if we identify a candidate by then and they have 60 days notice, 60 days from September puts you into November. And we don't exactly what the dates are. So I wasn't trying to accelerate it, and if we need to take more time, it's a critically important hire and we should do that. But I was trying to set a schedule that might terminate in the August 13th meeting and work backwards from there.
Where you're voting on a candidate in the August meeting?
No.
In open session, you're taking a vote.
The week of September 2nd was listed in closed session, discuss candidates and select the final candidate.
Right.
I was trying to make that the August 13th date or a special meeting if we need one.
That time frame would be most ideal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that gives them 60 days, which puts them into the middle of October, which syncs with your departure date and so forth.
Yeah.
And leaves some flexibility for their considerations on relocation or whatever.
Sure. This is a tentative schedule. If it gets accelerated naturally, that's perfectly fine. We can do that. I mean, I can make note of that.
So the first big decision is the posting period, when it starts and when
That's
it's
the
end, right?
first big decision we
Okay,
need to make
right.
here, right? That's the big one.
Let's get that one.
If we don't get it posted until July.
Right,
Yeah,
we need to lock that down tonight, I
correct,
think. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
I would like to, when we leave tonight, have these dates though firmed up as best we can. We can
Sure.
always change them. They'll change.
Sure,
But
sure.
I just don't want, I want to leave as little to doubt for the public who's wondering what's going on. They can look at this schedule
Sure.
and it'll be very transparent. So let's keep that in mind as to when we get to the final product. Any other comments on the schedule itself before we get on to the other topics related to it?
I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility required as we move on through this process, to be honest with you, in the form of special meetings and so forth. That's just the way it's going to be. And a lot of it depends on how many candidates and when they're available, et cetera, and when we're available. So there's going to be a lot of flex required in this process, I'm sure.
And and because it's falling in the summer, that has complicating factors for not only members of the council, but for applicants themselves. So that's one of those mitigating circumstances that we need to navigate. So, Angie, what from what's in front of us now, what would we change or alter? Would we say April 24 to post? Does that probably mean April 7th or April 10th, or what does that mean?
It's open. You had indicated in the previous council meeting that you wanted to post the job for 8 weeks. I suggested 6. You wanted to go 8, which is perfectly fine.
I wanted to go 4, just for the record.
I wanted to go 6. I
Oh,
agree with you.
go ahead.
Yeah,
And 79 applications
79
suggest.
applications for the assistant village manager's indication we're going to be fine. But go
Right.
ahead.
Well, I'd like to cast a wide net, and if the net means we got to do it for 60 days, I think that's more appropriate, at least for my thinking. I mean, I'm willing to.
I'm not going to argue over it. I'm just reminding folks of the position that I took. So go ahead.
so Monday, I guess, would be April 1st, I think, if my math is correct. Monday or
Then
Tuesday.
we need to really finalize the vacancy announcement
Correct.
language.
That
Because
is correct.
that is what's going to be presented both to applicants and to the public.
That is
And that will
correct.
be representative of the council's thinking as to what may or may not be envisioned for a village manager.
And the job description as well. And
Yes.
we've talked about that. We talked about that a little bit in the last meeting, and then we've had some email exchanges
I saw some
with,
of that.
with some recommendations there. So not only the vacancy announcement, but also the job description.
You think you can make an April 1st posting date,
I will have
contingent on the other things we're going to.
I will have to hustle, but the job description is easy enough. There were not very many changes to that. The vacancy announcement, Kristen has been assisting with that, with the photographs. I do have a draft of that today that I can show you. I wasn't able to email it. Shannon does have it in the packet, but I have copies here for you today if you would like to see those, and we can talk through those briefly.
I think we should, Pat, we should stay on the schedule, but if we could make April 1st, the cutoff that I had was May 25th. That would be 55 days, 1 day short of 8 weeks.
This is similar to, if not the same as the previous one, is that correct? With updated dates and so forth?
It's similar. I have updated the content, the copy on the inside. Some of the pictures have been updated, and Kristen is still working on that particular piece. And so we will get, we can finalize it and get another draft to you, hopefully relatively quickly. In this vacancy announcement are the characteristics that we've been having a discussion about. And what you see in there now is the previous. I had not changed that. I was waiting for this meeting in order to determine if that's what we want to do, if we want to make those changes that we talked about. And I also sent those to Shannon, so those will be on the agenda packet as well. So what we would want to talk about, and yeah, this is very similar to the vacancy announcement that you saw 2 weeks ago with the modifications, updated with numbers and skills and that sort of thing. The only thing that we talked about changing was the characteristics on the backside, or the layout, how that is laid out. I think
Right.
the structure more than the content.
Correct. I think this is a nice document.
Couple of questions. Under the salary and grade, I understand what contract means, but for an applicant, how are they going to know what is the range of salary?
Well, there's not really a range. There's kind of an upper end, and typically it's a negotiable. This is a negotiable.
Understand that,
negotiable,
but
right.
But shouldn't there be a range?
Typically, we don't post that when it's a contract employee.
Well, it's an interesting
can if you
question,
want.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'd like to do that. Otherwise, it's,
You'll have to tell me
I
then
don't
what
know.
your desired hiring range is.
that's fine. That we'll have to come up with that.
Because there is no range associated with this position because it's a contract job.
I understand that. but
Yeah.
a Contract will have a number, in the end, the contract will have a number in it.
But,
Well, it could. Mine initially didn't.
right.
What were you getting paid?
There was no range. It just
No,
had,
no, I
you just
meant-
had to pay, yeah.
But the contract will have an actual number in it.
Yeah, you're going to hire somebody at a salary.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that
Correct.
for applicants that are thinking of applying for a job, they generally have an idea of,
Wouldn't you think an applicant that would, if they're qualified, would have a reasonable idea as to the size of the town, and the position itself, and would have a general idea that it's going to be something and worthy of applying for,
Well,
you know?
yeah. I do. But I also
Worried
think,
about putting a number down or numbers
well, I also
down.
think that residents will be asking. We haven't hired a village manager in 10 years. I think residents are going to say, how much does this job pay? And it's.
Anywhere between $1 and $1 million. only,
Well,
you
but see,
know.
that, I tell you what, you'll scare the pants off some people if it's up to $1 million.
You got a number?
Actually, we can post it overnight and get 100 applicants for that, but,
But
go
just,
ahead, John.
Angie, the email that you sent with multiple documents in it, that was not part of the council packet for tonight, correct? So that even if I wanted to go surf the Village of Pinehurst website, I can't discover that number.
What do you, what information?
Current contract and so forth.
Current contract is public record, and it was actually posted to the agenda last meeting.
Okay. So I could, as an outside applicant, I could find out the current contract.
Right.
Right.
Pat, for whatever, I disagree with you. I don't think we should post a range. I think,
Typically, it's commensurate with experience and skill set. And you don't list, I understand what you're saying. Somebody could come in and say, I want $400,000 a year. Sure.
Yeah,
But
well, they could.
we
but-
would-
But that
we
would-
would-
they wouldn't be taken seriously as a candidate, in my mind.
Correct.
But
Correct.
I have two audiences I'm thinking about, the applicants and our residents. Because that's, what does this job pay? How much is that person getting? These are public employees, and people are, taxpayers often wonder, what is that? So that's what drives me to have a range, and obviously, in my previous experiences, there was always a range for senior executive, which is, this is the senior most executive job you can have in our government, would have a range.
But I think almost by definition, we're going to get two types of candidates. We're going to get candidates coming from smaller municipalities, okay, for whom this is more than likely a pay increase. We could get an application from a larger city, and maybe because of cost of living, what happened, maybe they're being paid more. I don't know. That may be moving from a higher to a lower coin. If you're moving from New York City here, you may not be entitled to the same level of compensation, and that will be part of the negotiation, I think.
And typically, yes, you could get somebody from New York City. It would be unlikely that you would get a city manager from New York City to apply for this role, but you could get an assistant manager from Raleigh that would apply for this role. And so, yeah, the pay is going to be understood, and I think people are going to have an idea. And because it's contract, there is no range associated with this. Now, you can have a hiring range, but you may disqualify a good candidate if you say our hiring range is going to be between, I'm going to make up a number that is not realistic for this job. If you say 50 to 60,000 is our hiring range, then you may knock out a lot of candidates who would ask for more money, which would be a reasonable amount of money.
But if you were to take the current salary of a village manager and you were to put a variance in there, 20% on either side, 25% on either side, and make that the range, why would that not be considered reasonable?
I don't know any other town that has a range for their village manager because they're contract.
Right.
I'm just not sure I would set those parameters. I mean, we can certainly do what needs to be done, but
Well, I will defer to my colleagues here, but I just have never been involved in the selection of a senior executive where we posted a job and we didn't put a range on it. In federal employment or in government employment.
Those are established ranges, though, are they not?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are established
They're federally established.
jobs, and they're a wide range.
That are made ahead of time
And
and
it's-
to ensure that there's fairness across the
There's
board.
There's a wide range,
Yeah.
relatively wide range,
Yeah.
based on government scales, so to speak. But
Well,
whereas-
Angie, do you think that having a number or a range makes it a better posting or a less attractive posting? Or, I mean, do you think it makes a difference? Let me put it that way.
for this type of job, I don't think the number is going to make a difference for an applicant.
That's what I'm going with.
I would be of the opinion not to use a range.
Okay,
Aye.
all right, I'll defer to the rest of the council on that.
I do believe people who really want to know what they're looking at or what the potential pay is, they're going to call and request, what's the current manager making?
Right, but again, that's half of the coin. The other half of the coin is our residents who are wondering, what are we thinking of paying this person?
Sure.
So.
Well,
have to
I
tell
think
them what we're
the
paying
new
now.
contract will
When
be
you
a matter-
sign the contract, it'll be a public document.
Right.
No, I understand that. That's right, after the fact, it'll be a public document. But before the fact,
Right.
that'd be, what are you thinking of paying this person? Well, here's the range. Okay, so we'll just leave it as contract under salary and grade. That's what's identified here,
Yes,
salary,
yes.
grade, contract.
And I think we are generically, I would assume, we are attempting to hire and compensate a candidate based on their existing experience and what have you. And we have an extraordinarily experienced person now. I think it's unlikely that we have to go materially higher. But maybe we're going to get the winner of the Olympic decathlon. I don't know.
Yeah, you might find out that the market's really driving things high right now.
And if it does,
Yeah.
then that's something we're going to have to just
That's
deal
right.
with.
So
Right.
The market will tell us rather than us telling the market.
It will, and I do have salary survey data as well for managers in other towns our size and that are similar to us. So, when we get to that point where we're ready to make an offer, we'll look at those details so we make the right offer.
I'm going down the position
description.
description document, if that's all right. The only other comment I had or have is that under description in the first sentence, I'd like to substitute the phrase "in cooperation with." I'd like to strike that and put under the direction of the village council and with, in cooperation with assistant village managers and department heads of the village.
I'm sorry, Pat, which document is this?
Position description, first sentence.
Got you. Okay.
And any changes you suggest tonight, I can have those ready for
That's
you
fine. That-
tomorrow.
I don't know if anyone has anything else they want to point out?
No, it
or
looked
offer
pretty
a
good.
change?
First bullet under duties is blank, I don't know why, so.
Well, those were the suggestions that were made to change, and I struck through that and added the two recommendations from Mr. Taylor.
Document.
So that bullet will come out, that's what you're saying.
Correct,
Right,
it will
okay.
come out, and it will not be read.
Just a brief word, and I may have misunderstood this. I thought possibly all of us would be sending thoughts to Angie, and she would sort through those that she thought were better or worse or what have you, and come up with a composite document. And in looking through the desired characteristics as part of this, it just struck me on first reading how many of the bullet points started with the same word. But they were sort of scattered back and forth, and that's why I thought we ought to just group them together. What are we looking for experience in? What are we looking for strength in? And that was, it was not to really try to change the document, because overall, I think it's perfectly accurate.
No, I think you did a good job of categorizing it. Yeah, it was a good job.
Yeah, and I tried to cross-reference it so you could see that
Yeah.
he kept the language generally the same.
There's very little taken out, and sometimes it got rearranged because a document that started with strength might later have demonstrated, and so I put that, but that's just personal preference.
The only thing I think I mentioned is working with the National Park Service may be a plus, but a bigger plus is actually having worked under the North Carolina statutes, you know, and understanding the limits of our municipality, and we're a child of the state. So,
I hadn't thought of that, but I actually think that's a very valuable
I
point.
mean, the first piece of reading you'll have is 160A or something like that to tell us whether or not we can.
And somebody coming from another state
As
that
of a
operates
soda drink,
differently
yeah,
is just, they're going to have to understand that that's great, but that doesn't work anymore.
Right, and anybody coming from another state is going to understand that that's going to be where they lack, and they'll most likely get up to speed if they've got those skills in another state. They'll most likely be able to get up to speed if they're your chosen candidate.
It can be a little bit of a cultural shock for some, though. but-
Sure.
Any other suggested edits for discussion? Okay.
I gave you one suggestion, but I don't think you ought to put it in there.
We'll keep that one out. Yeah.
You want to know what it was? Add faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and can leap tall buildings in a single bound. That was the only thing missing.
All right. Very original there, Jack. Okay, all right, so we made two minor edits. We have a timetable that you're flushing out, to say, for lack of a better word, or is it, is anything going to change from what is on this draft that you've put here in front of us? Does any council member believe that we're going to have a change to any of the narrative that's written here?
On the timetable?
Yeah.
The narrative, no, I think the narrative is exactly what the process should be.
Okay, now let's go, and how about the timelines and deadlines? I see their headline says tentative, so we understand that gives us the wiggle room,
Tentative.
but is,
So the thought process with the June 1st through June 14th, that was assuming we would get a lot of applications, and that gives us 2 weeks to review those. And by the end of that 2 weeks, have an initial shortened list. And then we would call a closed session, whether that's near a regular council meeting, or if we have to schedule a special meeting, we would do that, and with that shortened list, we would then send those candidates a supplemental question, like a phase 2 um, uh, questionnaire for them to complete. And so that would mean they would get that somewhere around June 14th, June 15th, and it would give them 2 weeks. If we don't want to give them 2 weeks, we can give them a week. The last questionnaire we sent out, I think, was 10 questions.
10 questions.
And we suggested 1 page per question. So,
I would make one request that you just add here the exact date of our scheduled council meetings. So,
okay.
because I will use this on my, it will be at my desktop, and I want to be able to see where things fall.
Pat, you had suggested you wanted to leave here with this timeline nailed down.
Yes.
Is that, I'm not sure what you're proposing relative to the dates that Angie had put on. Are you largely accepting her dates, except in the case of April, we're saying April 1st
Yeah,
as
well,
the launch?
the only thing that I was thinking of trying to, again, in the sort of the acceleration lane, shall we say, is to just move dates up a little, but if we're going to sort of stick with the 60 days, then it's 60 days. I mean, the only way you save really time on something like this is the advertising process.
Save the most time.
That's it.
Mhm.
Other than that, you're captive of the applications you get, where those people are located from, how you can arrange for interviews, and all those things. The only time saver that's possible is the amount of time that you have the job hanging out there. So if it's going to remain as it is, 60 days, then I don't know what else I would change, to be honest with you, unless you have a suggestion.
No, let me, again, work backward. If we do not target August 13th, which is our only regular August meeting, if that's not a date because we assume that we will schedule a special session at some point in August, difficult as that may be, then I have, if August 13th is a date that people care about, then I will be happy to give this to Angie and let her look at it. It has slightly different dates. If people don't care about that, then,
Well, when I was scribbling out my notes, that was the one date I put down also, was August 13th. My scribbling is reserve a closed session for discussion on the possibility that we would be.
so the only thing you're changing really is week of September 2nd becomes,
But again, if we're not ready when we're not ready, and if we are, I suppose we could accelerate things.
And I suspect that the topic of that discussion is something that you wouldn't need to necessarily have a special meeting for, because now you're just looking at the most serious candidates and trying to rank order those and come to a decision on who your
it could be
top prospect is.
in
So,
closed session at a regular
at a
meeting.
regular meeting, yeah. So,
And Angie, in order to put a little more pressure on us, and probably you to a degree, I would like to suggest that we have at least a due date of August 2nd to interview the candidates. July 22nd to August is, open-ended, because we only have one council meeting that month. There's probably some vacations. There's a tendency for vacations to be scheduled because we know we only have one council meeting that month. So,
But again, if August 13th is the date, do you want to say August 9th, which is the Friday before?
that would, are we jamming you then?
So I'm gonna say July 22nd to August, sometime in August was gonna be when you would interview candidates.
Right.
And keep in mind, that's 5 hours per candidate that you interview. So I'm trying to, yeah, it's gonna, because you're only interviewing a very small number of candidates, and usually that interview process is gonna go anywhere from 4 to 5 hours. Jeff, is that about how long yours was?
yeah, my recollection was that including dinner, it was about, 4 to 5 hours.
Right.
So dinner's involved also.
Well, if
That's
you.
what they,
I-
what
I'm
they
just-
did,
I'm
yeah.
sort of being facetious, I just hadn't heard that
Yeah,
before.
just as a reminder, we had 3 candidates that made the final cut that we interviewed.
I got you. Okay.
So, yeah, typically, those are candidates that you're serious about, that
Gotcha.
you're bringing in here.
No problem.
Essentially, you're saying one interview per day if you're going to do dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
1 interview per day, right. So I was just trying to build in some time.
So
because-
what date would you be
because of
comfortable with there at
scheduling.
all? What, the 4th or the?
Of August,
Yes.
from July 22nd to August 4th, interview candidates and have it finalized.
Well,
That's quick, but we can certainly put that with the understanding that that may need to move.
absolutely. I mean, again,
Sure.
it's all driven by the amount of applicants you have and
Right,
If I do the math right, the 4th is a Sunday, so I don't think much is going to happen on the 3rd and the 4th. Just to keep in, but practically speaking, the dates matter because how many days are you really going to be interviewing people?
correct.
And it also, from the standpoint of candidates, you can give them a little bit of a little more specific time frame. Listen, this is the period they want to interview. And if someone says, well, you know, I'm going to be on a cruise somewhere, well, we have to figure something out.
Right, so as long as you have flexibility and you understand that you're going to run into those kind of issues. Because this is about the same time frame that this happened 10 years ago.
Mhm.
We dealt with summers, we dealt with vacations, we dealt with all that as well. So, and the goal is to get that person selected. They may not start immediately, but it is to get that person selected. You're probably not going to want to have overlap. I'm just suggesting that typically you would start this person November 1st because who's in charge?
Well, we
So-
can, that's a different issue
Right.
for discussion, but
Right.
last time, what was it? How many months? 7 months
7.
before?
7
Was
months,
there a gap?
7 months.
Life went on, right?
We
You were
had,
there.
well, we had an interim manager.
Absolutely.
Starting December 1st because Andy's last day was the end
Right.
of November.
Okay, if we have to do that again, we do it again.
Right. Right.
Okay, so we've made a few edits. We've got a timeline that you'll add the council meetings and whatever, and the other little tweaks.
I will update this and I will send it to you.
Yeah, if you can
Update
circulate
this
that.
and send it to us?
I will. I'll update the timeline, I'll update the job description, and I'll work with Kristen over the next couple of days to get an updated vacancy announcement for you, and then we can plan to post next week.
And when you say vacancy announcement, this is what you're talking about.
That's
So
correct.
what change we made here will be reflected in here. Okay, I'm
Correct.
fine. Does anybody have any other issues to?
My only question was supplemental questions, which will go to a shorter list. Do you have those, or we should develop those, or do we review those?
So I'll have some for you that you can look through, you can change those, you can
Okay.
trash
I
them.
mean,
you
we have a
can
couple
start
months
from
to do it.
scratch, but it'll at least give you a starting point.
Okay,
We've got
great.
the 10
Thank you.
from my process, so
Right.
as a start point for
Great.
consideration.
Right.
Excellent, good, appreciate that.
I had only one question on the employment agreement itself, which maybe we don't even need to take up at this point.
I don't think we need to even take that up at this point.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Well,
Yeah,
I'm happy to
and we can
defer.
talk about that in closed session when it gets closer.
When do you expect us to have our first closed session discussion as a council in this process?
June.
I would say sometime in those first couple of weeks of June, we'll try to get it, obviously, before the US Open is here. That's another element we did, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess we were dealing with that 10 years ago, too, so. But in those first couple of weeks of June,
That's
that's
fine.
when we'll be looking through those.
That's what I was
And
looking for.
if we need to call a special meeting,
But
we'll work through that.
Target would be June 4th because we have a regular meeting. If we have to do it in a special meeting, then we
Right.
will.
Very well.
what is the end date? Is it the 25th
Of the,
of May, the posting date?
The closing date?
The closing date of the post,
oh,
correct.
it's not the 31st.
That's what I'm asking.
Well,
Because
I-
you had mentioned the 25th.
I'm going to defer to my colleagues on that. I have a different view of how long you have to post a job like this, but go ahead.
I'm fine with the 31st.
Yeah, if we're My only question is, if we're trying to target June 4th, which I don't think we're going to make, that doesn't give you very many days if we say May 31st.
I'm not going to get that with the May 25th either.
And
I'll
maybe,
just be
so maybe it
upfront.
doesn't matter, and then I would defer to Jack. If he wants 60 days, then that's fine.
You, do you have a date, or you want to?
I can post it the 31st unless you want me to do the 25th.
Okay,
They're not going to be
25th
ready
or
by June 4th.
31st, any takers?
25th.
31st.
I lose. So it's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
It is.
done?
31st.
Do you have
it
any
is.
questions for us?
I don't right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angie.
All right, now we go on to other business. I will ask my colleagues if they have any other business. I think I have one item, but go ahead. I'll start with Councilman Farrell. Is there anything you'd like to bring up?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Ficklin? No. Mr. Taylor?
I have only a question, which is this letter that was handed out. Is this for discussion later, sooner? Letter from February 28th from a resident?
I think that was public comment that came in electronically that Shannon may have just printed out for you. Is
Oh, I don't think.
that right,
That-
Shannon?
I
Is that
think
letter?
that's what I had, what, the mail I brought from your,
Oh,
Oh, that was from your mail.
That's-
thank you very much. Got it.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing further.
All right, that solves that mystery. I had one issue I wanted to just make sure we're clear on, and that is for the US Open, we're creating that social district and all that. There's a little, I don't know, little gray area as to the time and all. I've heard from some people about linking it to our noise ordinance and all. So where does it stand at the moment?
Oh, you were thinking of, are the dates, or the times that we normally cut off, 10 o'clock for other factors
Yes.
compared to the social district, which may be 11? I mean, should they be similar? Is that
Yeah,
what you're, I think,
I actually have heard that from a few people, which is why I raised it. And some
good question.
might be less confusing for our
If our
folks out there
ordinance, if
enforcing
our
things.
noise ordinance and some other ordinances have a limit of 10 o'clock for whatever reason, but the social district has a limit of 11 o'clock, does that make sense?
And that question came up when you all reviewed the ordinance 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's not a conflict there because they're two different issues. In other words, you can have a social district and not be disrupting the neighborhood with noise.
Correct, correct.
And indeed, the social district does not really encompass much of what I would consider truly neighborhoods.
Right. Yeah.
Question
It's
is,
adjacent to it, so there's some concern there. but
Are
yeah.
people at 10:30 or quarter to 11 on the way from the social district to wherever they park their car?
Well, the only question is 11 o'clock too lenient, or is it too strict, or is it just about right?
But I like the suggestion that after 11 o'clock, those establishments that are participating and wish to remain open can, but people are going to have to be inside at that point.
Okay.
They're not going to be able to walk around in the village the way we do other times, and that seemed reasonable to me.
Now, for that week, that may be a reasonable accommodation, I think, right?
Okay, and the second item, is there anything left to resolve on the food truck issue?
Yeah, it's a hot topic.
Okay.
I think where we are right now is the current plan that's still under development is that we will only have food trucks operating on those two big nights, and only in the evenings and for those two big events that we have planned downtown. And for the rest of the week, we will not be operating food trucks. So it'd be similar to like when we used to do a Live After 5 downtown. Or
Do we need to do an ordinance, or do we need to do anything specific?
No.
Well, maybe at our next meeting, we can spell it out clearly for vendors and for some of our downtown folks.
The issue in my mind, which I think I raised at the time, was accommodating food trucks from people who do not have businesses in our business district versus those who want to expand what they're doing by offering a food truck.
right.
By the way, which are the two nights?
So, yeah, so there's two different food truck conversations
Yes.
there. Thanks for bringing that back up, John. One is, and there's a lot of, we're hearing a lot of concern from our downtown businesses about the village's plan to use food trucks downtown. like we have for other large events in the past. And I think it's, I think some of the criticism was perhaps fair, because our initial draft plans called for those food trucks to be down there all week. But as we looked at it, we recognized that probably not appropriate on those lower scale days when don't have big events going down there. We don't, the whole idea behind bringing food trucks downtown has been that, when we're bringing large crowds downtown, to the extent that the crowds can't really be accommodated by the restaurant services that are in place down there, then we help to fill that need with food trucks. But for those other days when we aren't having the big events during the U.S. Open, we recognize it's probably not appropriate for us to have food trucks operating then, because then we're just taking business away from our
Yes.
downtown businesses.
So what are the big nights versus the time periods?
The two big nights are Wednesday, Saturday. Yeah.
Wednesday and Saturday?
Now, to John's point, the other question, which was enabled by the more permanent change to our municipal code that you approved at the last meeting about special events, allows for, in conjunction with large community events like the U.S. Open, for commercial property owners on their own property to use a food truck to augment their own existing business.
It would have to be able to fit them in their property though, correct?
Right.
And there was, if I recall the language of the ordinance, there's considerable discretion given to staff to decide how many are going to be allowed. And in some sense, I think that capacity constraint,
Yeah.
beyond how many porta potties we have or what have you, that's going to be an important consideration. We didn't really put any guardrails on that.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. I'm fine delegating that to staff. But I think they need to be sensitive to the business owner aspect of it.
Right.
I think we have to come up with something very clear that we can put on our website for our residents and vendors and downtown owners to understand what it is we decide upon. Because I do think there is some confusion. But I think once we pick the dates, the days, that might settle some things. Once we pick, firm up the timeline, that will settle things. But right now, there's just a little bit of hesitation as to what is it precisely you're doing, is what they want to know.
Well, I mean, and to be fair to everybody involved in this, we're still wrestling with the mechanics of everything. So.
I understand. I'm not asking for it tonight, but I just think we need to get something in the next, several weeks.
With respect to, yes, if all of the tables and all of the village establishments are full and I'm hungry, I don't want to have to wait 45 minutes.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if I have a choice of waiting 15 minutes or, gee, there's a food truck over there. So there's still some competition, even if the
That's right.
downtown residents are close to capacity.
Yeah.
And we need to be sensitive
There's
to
kind of
that.
we just got to be sensitive to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we will revisit this after you all have thought it through a little more. Staff has
Yeah, at some
Nailed it.
point in the future, we'll be probably be bringing back the whole U.S. Open plan for you to let you know how all this settled out.
Good.
I was getting at. All right. Other council questions or issues that anyone wants to raise? Nope, I see none. Okay, let's go on to comments from the public. Shannon, do we have anybody who wants to speak? Thank you. We have one person who has signed up, Mr. Stephen Say. And if there's anybody who would like to speak who hasn't signed up, they are welcome to follow Mr. Say. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. As always, lots to unpack here at these meetings. I got a couple related issues. One, I guess, a micro issue of the library, macro issue of a representation. I've been a resident for 19 plus years now. It seems like for most of those years, there's been a lot of talk about the library and staff time and consultant time and quite frankly, previous council time trying to figure out the best plan based on the size of not only where we are now, but where we're going to go. Unfortunately, we seem to have a value engineering process in large part driven by an agenda of a group that most of which don't seem to want a library, and that's a problem. And as you know, Jack, I don't agree with you on a lot of things, but I do appreciate the fact that you joined with Jeff to try to stop the madness. And instead, we have this constant value engineering after professionals have looked at it, both from a location standpoint, and Jack, as you well know, it cannot go on the existing site. And the advantage to that is that I think we could have a world-class Ross Archives that would be fantastic, right? But, so, I would appreciate, and look, all of my kids are out of school, right? And I appreciate things like AstroTurf fields and community centers and other parks and such. And, and I think as a community, we all should be thinking that way. And unfortunately, we have the Friday group out there dictating the agenda. The same people that helped themselves to the taxpayer nipple when they were raising their families, all of a sudden there's not a need for a library, or we can shrink it down. Maybe it's a lending closet, right? Or they can go to Raleigh, right? It's unacceptable, right? So I don't understand now. Understand that this village I found as a whole leads the nation in both selfish and hypocritical behavior. So it's not a total shock, but I mean, let's look at the future, right? Because I guarantee right now, Pat, as you cut that ribbon in 3 years, 2.5 years, however long it is, that facility is going to be immediately inadequate. And the cost, right, for future add-ons are going to be significantly higher than now, okay? We have the money. Most importantly, we have the need, okay? Libraries are different now. That doesn't mean we don't have the need. So I would encourage you to look at what the needs of the community as a whole are. You represent the community. You don't represent a small group of individuals that don't want to spend money on anything, that have already checked off the fields and the libraries and the things that they needed to raise their families. So now the answer is no. Okay, I don't need my $3.83 back. Okay, I want to see funds, which we have, prudently spent on the needs of this community. So if you can consider and understand that, just, whoever elected you, right, you represent the community as a whole on this issue and future issues. Thank you. Have a nice night.
See, I thought you said you had a couple issues. Just that was it? You covered it all?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I
thank
can
you.
always talk on any number of issues, but I'm
I'm
going to
sure.
limit it to my
I wasn't
3
trying to
minutes.
squeeze any more time out of you. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd care to speak, address the council? No. Okay. We'll entertain a motion if anybody would like to make one.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
Motion, second. We're adjourned for 10 minutes. Thank you.